We are back. That's right. We are back to race and ethnic relations on campus. I am Dr. B. Dr. B. This is show number 21, and welcome to 2020. This is our first show during the year 2020, the decade 2020. And we are officially back. This is show number 21. It's entitled, we're taking a change of course. This is a new decade. This is a new year. And we're taking a change in the direction of our podcast shows. This show is called, Do We Live in a Post-Racial Society? That's right. The question is out there. Do we live in a post-racial society? It's 2020. It's a new decade. And I am asking the most practical question in this show. Do we live in a post-racial society? It's come to that, and it's time to kick off the new decade talking about post-racial society. Welcome back. My name is Dr. B, and welcome back to our shows. This is our first show of 2020. As I said earlier, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank Podbean. I'm going straight to it. Podbean, I want to really thank Podbean for giving us this platform to continue our shows. We appreciate all the downloads, all the interest in our shows from across the different platforms. Again, we want to thank Podbean. We're going to get back to live streaming in 2020 as well, because now a lot of things are happening nationally, internationally, but also the semester has started for me. I'm actually teaching a race and ethnic relations class as well. So, but I would like to use this podcast platform to talk about other things, and this is actually a question of in my class for my students, and but I want to stretch out the discussion in this podcast show. So thanks to Podbean, thanks to iTunes. Appreciate iTunes very much. I want to thank Spotify. I want to thank as well as YouTube. And I really want to thank iHeartRadio for picking up our podcasts and continuing in 2020. So thank you very much, iHeartRadio. So there we go. Here we are with the new show, the first show of 2020. Do we live in a post-racial society? This is very critical, very, very, very critical in today society, because there's a lot of majority of Americans truly believe we live in a post-racial society. If you do a poll in the United States, most Americans will say, yes, we live in a post-racial society. That is, there's no racial discrimination. Minority groups have access and equal opportunity for any and major job in the United States. And there is no blatant racism, blatant discriminatory policies against minorities. And it's an equal playing field. Basically, it's an equal playing field across the board in jobs, in opportunity, in income, healthcare, education, across the landscape. So, again, you can Google it and come up with the data that most Americans in the United States in 2020 truly believe we live in a post-racial society. And with probably the biggest evidence of this, I want to make sure my recording is going on. Yeah, biggest evidence of this, most Americans thinking that we live in a post, is because, as we all know, we elected, and I say we, the United States elected their first African American president back in, when was it again? Oh my gosh. Back in 2008, President Barack Obama. Was it in 2008? Wow, it's 2020 now. And yeah, and for 2 terms. And that period of time, having an African American black president convinced a lot of Americans that if you elect a minority, and I'm speaking from majority standpoint, if you elect a minority as president of the United States 2 term and in the highest office, that means a majority of Americans believe that race is not an issue, and we equalize the playing field, providing an African American with the most prestigious job in the United States, president, and thereby during the 2 terms, a lot of Americans feel like we have equalized the playing field, and race is no longer an issue in America, because again we have continued to have a African American president for 2 terms, and of course now it's changed. You know, we have a different president in the office, Donald Trump, and yet we still most Americans will still say that, you know, our country has elected a black president. That's the shining example of that we live in a post-racial society. So I posed a question to each and every one of you. Do we live in a post-racial society? Send me an email. Please send me an email at baileye.ecu.edu if you believe we live in a post-racial society. In 2020, because this is very important. We're kicking off a new decade, and this is a critical question. During those 8 years of Barack Obama, we had a lot of new initiatives that were different from the mainstream, and it was supported by a certain constituent. And now during the past 4 years, after his election, we have see a change in America. Okay? So now is the time to say, do we live in a post-racial society? Hello? Let's be real out there. It's time to be real. Have we eliminated discrimination? Not just for the highest office, but for everyone, every minority in America. Have we eliminated the prejudice, the discriminatory policies across the board? Do people no longer judge others based upon the color of their skin? In 2020, what's the real feeling out there? And these are tough questions. And they're really not tough questions, but tough answers. Because we're starting a new decade. This is a pivotal decade for the United States. And dare I say, most Americans truly do believe we live in a post-racial society. And I'm going to be on record saying, no, we don't. We do not live in a post-racial society. We do not. I wish I could say that we do. But to be completely honest, not to be politically correct, but to be truly honest, no, we do not live in a post-racial society. There are still discriminatory practices across the board in jobs, in income, in healthcare, in education, in sports, across the board. Yet we don't see and talk about it in great detail as much anymore. And why is that we don't? Cause we like to feel good. Americans like to feel good that we come across we went across a barrier. We've approached that line and we went across it. We accepted having a black president in charge of all Americans, all of the United States. And dare I say, at that time, a lot of folks thought our country would go into a very difficult transition and would not survive, but we survived. Wow, we achieved a lot of things during those 8 years, and then now, past 4 years, we're still moving forward. Yet, how do most Americans truly feel when they see a person of color taking charge of a program in their community, at their institution? Do we still have many more people of color getting opportunities? And I'm just saying in general. Do we still have pushback? And I do mean pushback from all types of groups when we have minorities moving into the upper tier administrative jobs, upper tier classifications, no longer being stuck in the lower income level or lower poverty level. Look at the data. But just go around in your community and talk to folks when you go to the grocery store, when you go to your health clinic, when you go to a sporting event. Do you still see or experience those of individuals who are persons of color? Do you still experience pushback or looks of discrimination or uncertainty from others? And does the non-persons of color, do they think about being safe around people of color? Is there still a divide between persons of color and non-persons of color in our 2020 decade? Those are some practical questions, not just talking about jobs, some practical questions of day-to-day interactions. And this is what race relations is all about. Race and ethnic relations is all about on campus and off campus. How do you feel interacting, engaging, being around people who are different than you? Do you feel uncomfortable? Do you feel it doesn't matter? Do you feel scared? Or you don't even think about it? Now, if we just think about, if we live in a post-racial society, you don't even think about the interactions in different, when you go to different communities in your town, in your city. And you might go into one side of the city as a town, or as opposed to another. And one side might be more people of color than another. Do you feel comfortable in that environment? Are you conscious of it? If you're not even conscious of it, wow, that's evidence of, wow, we do live in a post-racial society. But I dare to say that a lot of folks are very conscious of where you interact and go day to day, whether it's in the city, in the town, on the campus, at social events, community events. You're very much aware of your surroundings. And do you feel comfortable in those surroundings? When you get there and there's people who look different than you. And I mean by different, persons of color. Whether you're in the black community, Hispanic, Latino community, Asian, Pacific Islander community, Indian, Native American community. Do you still feel comfortable? Or whether a person of color feel comfortable in a predominantly white Caucasian environment, neighborhood. It's both sides. Do we still feel comfortable? That's one of the outcomes of this question. Answering this question is the question leads to another question. Do we live in a post-racial society? Do you feel comfortable in another person's community? And dare I say the answer is no, I don't. Yes, Dr. B is going to come out and say, yeah, well, in 2020, no, I still don't feel comfortable. I don't even think about it, but sometimes I don't feel comfortable if I have to go to a predominantly, when I know there's predominantly white community environment, I know that I have to be on my P's and Q's, because many times if I'm the only one person of color in that neighborhood, sometimes, I get those extra looks by people in that community as indicating, why am I there? So I'm aware of it. And that's what you have to do in a practical sense. You don't want to be aware of it. I don't want to be aware of it. I don't want to be conscious of it all the time. But if I go to another side of the city and it's, okay, say for instance, very high income and predominantly white, I'm going to be a little bit on my P's and Q's, because I know there's very few individuals like myself living in that community or visiting that community. And there might be others who pay attention to my presence in that community. Even though I'm a professor, I'm in a higher income level. Yet as a person of color, I don't feel comfortable. Even in 2020. Can you believe it? Oh gosh, I didn't even anticipate. I'm really personalizing these shows now. And this really relates to, what my students are talking about. They don't feel comfortable. They see the discrimination on and off campus. And dare I say, I think that many of my students today in 2020, 18 to 22-year-olds, do not believe we live in a post-racial society. And I'm just going to say personally, I don't believe we live in a post-racial society. I feel good that we can apply for different jobs. We can go anywhere. But there are, dare I say, reality checks along that way. It looks good on paper that every institution and every place can say we are not discriminatory. We hire all folks of all backgrounds. But the reality is, when you start seeing those who are actually in those jobs, hello, in academia jobs, in labor jobs, in different skilled jobs. There are various discriminatory practices, and you know that we, just by the appearance of those things, those issues, we still live in a post-racial society. Because we still have those expectations that certain people will be in certain positions consistently. Some folks don't feel comfortable with persons of color around them on a regular basis. And persons of color don't feel as, sometimes don't think about it, but may not feel as comfortable with nothing but non-persons of color around them. So it goes both ways. I'm not saying one way or opposed to another. It goes both ways. We all want to feel comfortable. But why do we still feel slightly uncomfortable in 2020? If we still feel uncomfortable in 2020, we do not live in a post-racial society. Period. Yes, we interact. Yes, we socialize in different major events, sporting events, social events, university events, college events. Yes, we do. However, when you break it down of where we actually socialize on a consistent basis, we still separate ourselves out from one community to opposed to another. And just by our individual selections, that tells you that we still do not live in a post-racial society. Why is that? What is going on? Now I'm taking the question. Why is it? And I've already answered the question. Okay, I've answered the question, and now I'm asking another third question to this topic. Why are we still like this? What is going on in our society in 2020 in which we consciously select ourselves away from other groups? We separate ourselves and stay around people who we feel more comfortable with, who look like us. Why is that in 2020? And dare I say, let me just say this. Since I'm a baby boomer and being 61 years of age, when we thought of the year 2020, way back when I was in high school and middle school, we thought that would be, that's the future. That's like the cartoon George Jetsons and Jetsons. I had to say that because I'm asking many of my colleagues now who are 60 and baby boomers. They say, no, wow, where's the space planes? where's the new technology? Where's all the things that we dreamed of? We fascinated ourselves about. We envisioned ourselves way back during the 60s, mid 60s and early 70s. We thought our world would be completely different in 2020. I kid you not. And many of my colleagues always are right now, once it turned 2020, we are still amazed that we are living in this decade, this futuristic decade, and a lot of things are basically still the same. Still the same. And therefore, that's the reason why I answer the question, no, we do not live in a post-racial society. It's nice to say, it's nice to envision ourselves to being in a post-racial, but in real terms, no, we don't. The U.S. has a long way to go. And it's just not the U.S., it's still global. It's still global. We have to work on the minute things, the day-to-day things, to get everyone to feel more comfortable with each and every one of someone who just doesn't look like them, has a different culture, different language, different history. We are not there. And it shows itself in the day-to-day interactions that we have with one another. And I see this, unfortunately, among my college students, even in 2020. Because, again, I can see how they're struggling with these issues, and they're very passionate about the issue. They really want things to change, but, outside their campus environment, they are very conscious that things are not changing at the pace of which they really want it to be. And unfortunately, certain institutions are not changing as fast as they could be. So let me just say that there are factors in our society that are not encouraging us to truly live in a post-racial society. Hello! I said there are factors out there, and I'm not going to identify the factors at this point in time, but there's factors out there that are preventing us in living in a post-racial society. Yeah, there are a lot of folks say, oh gosh, can't we just live at one and hold hands and say kumbaya and all that. There's a lot of folks that love to say that. Hello. In the fiction world and academia, there's a lot of folks like that. But let me be real, it's not. Oh man, I get tired of those folks because they stay in their closed-in academia world. There's fantasy world, but when I see my students have to deal with the real stuff, and when I have to deal with the real stuff outside of the academia world, it tells me, no, we don't live in a post-racial society. I answered the question. There you go. I'm being real in 2020. That's the lesson for today. That's the lesson. Be real. It's 2020. Embrace 2020. Enjoy 2020. Start to make the real changes in 2020. That's what I'm getting to in these new shows. Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus. Oh, by the way, I'm going on my book tour, Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus, Understanding Empowerment and Solutions for College Students. Thanks to ABC Clio, I will be attending a couple of conferences this year. Hopefully the one in Chicago and the one in Washington, D.C. I will be there when they're featuring my book at the different conferences, particularly the conference on for public and academic librarians. I will be there talking about my book, because Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus, published in 2018 by ABC Clio Prager Publisher, is big time promotions this year, and I'm going to be out there promoting my book on a completely new level, because there's additional interest. So again, thank you, ABC Clio. Let me make sure I say that again. Thank you, ABC Clio, for helping me continue to get the book out there. I'm 28 minutes in, and I'm still going to there's a lot of interest among my students in my book, Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus, Understanding Empowerment and Solutions for College Students. Thank you for listening. Thank you for purchasing. Check out my website, my Race and Ethnic Relations, and that's the answer to podcast question number 20, show number 21. Do we live in a post-racial society? No. There you go. This is Dr. B. Thank you. I want to thank our sponsors, Podbean, thank iTunes, thank Spotify, thank YouTube, and of course, I want to thank iHeartRadio. This is show number 21. If you want to email me at baileye.ecu.edu, and please go ahead, debate me. I love it. Send me your email at baileye.ecu.edu. Thank you very much. Talk to you again soon. This is Race and Ethnic Relations on Campus. Peace out, folks. It's 2020.